The late afternoon sun cast long, golden shadows across the deserted park bench. A solitary glove, delicate ivory silk embroidered with a single pale rose, lay forgotten, its twin long gone. Isabella Hartley, heart-pounding, had brandished that glove in a frantic bid to chase down a departing carriage, only to watch it slip from her gloved hand as the wheels clattered over cobblestones. She never turned back. Miles away, beneath the glow of gaslight on the university quad, Ethan Sinclair unfolded that same glove with reverent fingers. He'd found it earlier, an artifact of someone's haste, someone's story. To him, it felt like a promise, a moment suspended in time, waiting for resolution. He tucked it into his coat pocket, certain it belonged to someone extraordinary. In the days that followed, Ethan carried Isabella's glove everywhere. It warmed his hand on crisp autumn mornings and reminded him of a face he'd never seen. Each morning, he'd press it to his cheek, as though drawing strength from an unspoken connection. Yet behind his curiosity lay vulnerability. He, too, had abandoned pieces of himself, dreams, trust, a past love on benches of chance. Now, holding this glove, he faced a new conflict. The longing to return it, or the fear that, in doing so, he might lose the only tangible link he'd felt in years. And so, as twilight deepened, both Isabella and Ethan stood unknowingly on the brink of change, haunted by the absence of something precious. He, driven by the hope that a simple glove might lead to a dance neither had dared to dream. Isabella Hartley paused at the wrought iron gates of the Rosewood Manor Gardens, her heart a drumbeat of anticipation and dread. Tonight was the winter masquerade, a gathering of the city's elite, where reputations were forged in laughter and whispered behind silk fans. The invitation had arrived on ivory paper sealed with crimson wax, bearing her family's crest. Yet as she adjusted the white fur trim of her cloak, a tremor of uncertainty coursed through her. She remembered her mother's voice that morning. "Isabella, dearest, the Sinclair fortune awaits you tonight. Make an impression, but control yourself. You know how quickly society can turn its back." Her mother's warning echoed in her mind as she stepped onto the gravel pathway, lanterns flickering like captive stars. Each footfall felt inevitable, dragging her deeper into a world of scrutinizing eyes and sharp-tongued gossip. The grand ballroom loomed ahead, its windows aglow, promising warmth and splendor, but also the sting of judgment. Inside, the air hummed with polite conversation and the rustle of taffeta. Masks concealed faces, yet nothing hid the scrutinizing glances aimed at newcomers. Isabella's cheeks warmed beneath her snow-white mask as she made her entrance. Chandeliers dripped crystal light, setting the marble floor aglow. Musicians tuned their strings in a corner, while guests sipped champagne that caught the light like liquid moonbeams. Her companion for the evening, Lord Theodore Ashford, a suitor chosen by her parents, bowed beside her. He eliminated any hope of anonymity. "My lady," he murmured, voice low and smooth as satin, "you take my breath away." His words, rehearsed and hollow, felt like a gilded cage. Isabella forced a smile. "Thank you, Lord Ashford." Yet every syllable felt strained. She recalled Ethan's glove, folded carefully at the bottom of her reticule. It was her whispered proof that she'd once been free of these expectations, free to lose herself, however briefly, in simple wonder. A ripple passed through the crowd. Lady Cressida Foxworth had arrived. Draped in emerald velvet, she carried herself with the assured poise of a swan. Lady Foxworth's reputation for ruthless matchmaking and whispered criticisms was legendary. As she swept past Isabella, her eyes flicked over her from head to toe, a single raised brow enough to ignite a fire of self-doubt. "Isn't that the Hartley girl?" came a hushed murmur. Isabella felt the sting. She tightened her grip around Lord Ashford's arm. Lady Foxworth paused, masked lips curving into a polite smile. "Miss Hartley," she intoned, voice cool as frost. "Your gloves are exquisite." Isabella's heart lurched in excitement and fear. Compliment or condescension? She leaned closer. "You honor me, Lady Foxworth." But the lady's gaze skimmed past the glove, over the costly lace of Isabella's gown, to the simple pearls at her throat, the heirloom her grandmother once wore. Hesitation flickered in Lady Foxworth's eyes, as though weighing Isabella's worth. Then she turned smoothly away, leaving Isabella uncertain whether she'd been praised or dismissed. Across the room, a quartet struck up a waltz. Couples glided onto the floor, alabaster skirts swirling like snowfall. Isabella's pulse quickened. Dancing felt like flying, but tonight she felt grounded by dread. Lord Ashford offered his hand. She forced herself to accept. As they glided into the circle of dancers, Lord Ashford murmured, "You're uneasy. Have you no faith in yourself?" His breath tickled her ear. Isabella's mind raced. Should she confess the trembling in her chest? The way every glance felt like a verdict. Instead, she smiled. "I merely wish to do justice to this splendid evening." His eyes flicked to the glove peeking from her bag. "That glove, is it new?" She froze. She'd forgotten to remove it. The ivory silk shone under the chandelier. "I found it," she whispered, "on a bench before the carriage ride." His lips curved with polite intrigue. Strange keepsakes can mean anything or nothing. Her breath caught. In that moment, she felt the full weight of her predicament. A borrowed confidence hinging on a trinket, while her true self remained hidden under layers of expectation. Mid-waltz, laughter erupted at the edge of the dance floor. A group of debutantes, arrayed in silvery feathers and jewels, circled a young girl whose mask had slipped, revealing a smudge of real tears on her cheek. The others laughed, bright and cruel, until the girl fled toward the balcony. Isabella's stomach tightened. She remembered her own first debutante ball, the childish giggles at her too large shoes. Without thinking, she drew closer to the fleeing girl, guided by empathy more than courage. Lord Ashford frowned, but let her go. Isabella slipped through the dancers and out into the moonlit balcony, where winter's chill bit at her cheeks. The girl stood trembling, mask clutched to her chest. "They said I didn't belong," she sobbed. "That I was a charity case." Isabella's heart throbbed. "Ignore them," she said softly, placing a steady hand on the girl's shoulder. "Their voices are frozen by fear. They'll melt when they realize they're nothing without compassion." The girl blinked through tears. "But what if I'm wrong?" Isabella hesitated, remembering every moment of her own doubt. "Then guard your heart, but don't let fear keep you from living." She reached into her bag and withdrew the glove, offering it like a talisman. "Keep this. Let it remind you that even the smallest kindness can be powerful." As the girl slipped the glove on, a small smile broke through. Below, the muffled strains of the waltz continued, but Isabella felt a shift in herself, an ember of resolve glowing warm against the winter air. She re-entered the ballroom alone. Lord Ashford intercepted her, mask in hand, eyes narrowed. "Where have you been?" he demanded. "I was needed," she replied steadily, "and now I'm ready to dance." He studied her for a long moment, as though weighing her worth. Finally, he stepped aside, offering his arm. Isabella realized she no longer cared for his approval. Instead, she felt the quiet determination to forge her own path. As the waltz's opening notes sounded anew, Isabella placed the glove back in her bag. But this time, it felt like a symbol of her own strength rather than a crutch for insecurity. The room no longer seemed suffocating, but like a stage poised for her next act. Tonight had been her crucible, the jeers, the whispered judgments, the moment of compassion that revealed her true character. And though her path ahead remained uncertain, with society's expectations looming like shadowed columns, she had taken her first step toward self-acceptance. Unseen in a shadowed alcove, Ethan Sinclair watched her glide across the floor, gloves safely stowed. His own heart stirred. He'd admired the glove's craftsmanship, but now he realized it belonged to someone far more remarkable. The night had shifted, both for Isabella, who had faced her doubts, and for Ethan, who had glimpsed the courage behind the mask. Their intertwined stories had begun, and neither would ever be the same. Over the following weeks, the glove remained safely tucked inside Isabella's satin-lined jewelry box, its presence a quiet reminder of that night's unexpected courage. Yet as winter deepened over Rosewood Manor and the city donned its frost-kissed cloak, Isabella found herself drawn back into the heart of the very society that had tested her limits. Invitations arrived like gentle daggers. Luncheons hosted by dowager countesses, afternoon teas where whispered rumors carried faster than the steam rising from porcelain cups, and benefit balls meant to secure her future, each event bristling with hidden thorns. At the first charity luncheon of the season, Isabella entered Ashcroft Hall under a canopy of gilded mistletoe. Her dress, soft dove-gray velvet with a sweeping skirt, was praised by her mother, but failed to comfort Isabella's restless heart. Across the room, Lord Ashford held court among a cluster of aristocrats. Their eyes met for a fleeting moment. He offered a polite nod, but withdrew before she could smile. She realized then that apologies from others meant little. She would have to forge her own path forward. Conversation buzzed around her as she sipped tea. Madame Verity Chalmers, famed for her acerbic wit, leaned in and murmured, "Your recent display of benevolence, Miss Hartley, was quite theatrical. Are you certain your heart is as pure as your glove is white?" Her tone, half mockery, half challenge, sent a flush across Isabella's cheeks. The assembled ladies tittered, their gloved hands fluttering to their fans. Isabella forced a calm smile. "Madame Chalmers, surely any kindness is worth the stage it receives." Later, in the Manners Library, Isabella attempted to lose herself in political treatises and poetry. Yet every page blurred as her thoughts drifted to Ethan Sinclair. She discovered his name in the society ledger. He was a third-year philosophy student at the university, known for his lectures on ethics and aesthetics. Rumor held that he was reclusive, preferring books to ballroom chatter. Yet he'd shown a compassion that evening, rescuing the glove, touching a part of her she'd hidden even from herself. At dusk one day, she summoned her courage. Determined to return the glove to its rightful owner, Isabella wrote a brief note and enclosed her address, sending it via her most trusted footman. She told herself it was merely a courteous gesture, no more. Yet each morning, as she passed her locked writing desk, she felt a pang of anticipation. On a frigid January evening, a reply arrived in crisp, navy blue parchment. The letter bore Ethan's precise, elegant script. "Miss Hartley, thank you for your kindness in returning my glove. I would be honored to meet with you and thank you personally over coffee at the university's courtyard cafe this Friday at 3. Yours sincerely, E." Sinclair, the inked words danced before her eyes like a promise. Yet excitement warred with dread. Meeting him meant stepping outside her carefully curated world. What would she say? What intrepid remark could shield her from appearing foolish or, worse, vulgar? Friday afternoon arrived in a haze of swirling snowflakes. Isabella wrapped herself in her finest sable scarf, tightened her gloves, and took a deep breath before entering the courtyard cafe, a small, ivy-clad establishment warmed by copper kettles and scholarly chatter. She spotted Ethan immediately. Dark coat collar turned up against the chill, head bent over a steaming mug. His eyes looked up as she approached, and in that gaze, she felt the echo of understanding. They greeted each other with a shy formality, the glove resting on the table like a silent mediator. Over thick hot chocolate, they spoke of trivialities, winter's beauty, the scholarly lecture she'd heard in passing, the benign cruelty of snow that both beautified and chilled the world. Yet between questions and answers lay a deeper exchange, the gentle probing of two souls seeking kinship. As snow drifted outside, Ethan admitted quietly, "That glove, it wasn't merely a lost object to me. It belonged to my grandmother, a woman of great warmth who believed small gestures held great power. I thought it gone forever." His voice trembled with a tenderness Isabella recognized from her own memories of loss, the passing of her beloved aunt, who had taught her to read the stars. Isabella's throat tightened. She reached across the table, placing her hand over his. "I understand what it is to lose something you thought you'd never live without," she said softly, "and to feel dread at moving on." Ethan's eyes glistened. He removed the glove, pressing it into her hand. "Thank you for returning this, and for reminding me that the world still holds chances for reclamation." Their meeting, intended to be brief, stretched into dusk. They spoke of literature and music, of dreams interrupted by society's demands. Isabella found herself revealing truths she'd hidden even from her closest friends. Her fear of being valued only for her lineage, her yearning to be known for her passions. In return, Ethan confessed that he'd looked forward to this moment since the masquerade, though he'd feared reaching out, uncertain if she'd accept the earnest, bookish man behind the mask of a society girl. When they finally parted, the sky had turned indigo, lit by lanterns like scattered fireflies. Isabella felt a lightness, as though she moved for the first time under her own power. Yet the world outside remained unchanged. Expectations, gossip, and alliances still swirled beyond the cafe's frosty windows. In the days that followed, their clandestine meetings became a refuge. Ethan led her through hidden snow-dusted groves on campus, where ice-crusted branches formed cathedral arches. He guided her toward a modest gallery showcasing student artwork, paintings that captured raw emotion without veneer. Isabella, in turn, shared passages from her grandmother's journal, reading aloud by gaslight in his dorm room. But the season's rising action demanded conflict. Rumors began to stir. Isabella's sojourns beyond the manor walls, once discreet, could no longer be concealed. At a formal dinner, her mother confronted her with barely concealed anger. "Isabella," she hissed between porcelain clinks, "your sudden preference for these scholarly diversions is unbecoming. A debutante does not wander like a common student. What will our social circle think?" Isabella's heart raced. She recalled Ethan's earnest smile, the shared confidences that had kindled her spirit. "Mother," she said, voice trembling but firm, "I must follow my own convictions. I cannot be content as a replica of decorum when I am learning what sets my heart ablaze." Her mother's face paled like the winter moon. "You dare defy me?" she whispered, fury laced with disbelief. The other guests shifted uncomfortably. The tension in the room crackled like icicles about to snap. Before the confrontation could deepen, Lord Ashford rose to his feet, bowing with calculated grace. "Ladies and gentlemen, forgive the disruption. May I propose a toast to Miss Hartley's health and happiness?" His voice carried across the table. A dozen crystal glasses chimed in response. Relief coursed through Isabella's veins, but not without resentment toward Ashford's interference. He'd saved her from public disgrace, yet in doing so reminded her of the chasm between societal expectations and the life she yearned to lead. That very night, Isabella held the glove close to her heart. She recognized the moment had come to choose: return fully to the gilded cage of expectations, or embrace the uncertain path illuminated by her bond with Ethan. The glove, once a symbol of chance, now embodied her choice: to step boldly into the dance of her own making, despite the storm of disapproval brewing on every horizon. The night of the Frostlight Ball arrived in a storm of swirling snow and lantern-lit anticipation. Rosewood Manor's grand ballroom, its ice-blue draperies and crystalline chandeliers, resembled a palace of frozen dreams. Isabella Hartley entered beneath an arch of frost-laden holly, her dove-gray gown shimmering like moonlight on fresh snow. In her gloved hand, she carried the ivory silk glove that had changed the course of her heart. Inside, the air crackled with excitement. Society's finest whispered beneath lace masks, while servants circulated trays of spiced cider and candied pecans. Isabella's mother stood at the head of a long table, surrounded by her circle of ladies, each face a mask of polite expectation. She caught Isabella's eye and inclined her head with imperious grace. The message was clear: behave. Ethan waited in a quiet gallery off the ballroom, where windows framed the storm's fury. Candles flickered atop marble pedestals, illuminating student sculptures frozen in dynamic poses. Isabella found him by a white marble statue of a dancer, its outstretched hand a silent invitation. He turned, his gaze bright with both relief and concern. "I almost feared you wouldn't come," he said quietly. Isabella gave him a small smile. "I nearly didn't," she admitted, "but I owe you more than promises over coffee." He reached for her hand, but Isabella's eyes turned toward the ballroom archway, where Lord Ashford had just entered, flanked by her mother and a cluster of society matrons. Ashford's polite veneer masked a smirk of triumph as he swept a hand toward Isabella. "Miss Hartley," he intoned, voice carrying through the gallery, "I believe you've forgotten your place." Isabella's heart thundered. She glanced at Ethan, his expression firm, protective, and then back at Ashford. The choice lay before her: acquiesce to his mocking claim or stand for her own truth. Drawing a steadying breath, she stepped forward, the ivory glove tucked into her palm like a talisman. "Lord Ashford," she replied, voice clear, "my place is determined by my convictions, not by whispered expectations." Gasps rippled through the assembled guests. Ashford's brow furrowed. Convictions, he repeated, disdain lacing each syllable. You dare defy your family's wishes, your society's rules, because of a trinket and a college student. Isabella felt the weight of gazes, her mother's disappointment, Chalmers's smirk, Lady Foxworth's narrowed eyes. Yet she felt something stronger, the warmth of Ethan's gaze, the conviction of her own heart. It's not the glove, it's what it represents, she said, lifting her hand so the ivory silk caught the candlelight. Compassion, courage, the freedom to choose one's own path. Her mother's lips parted in horror. Isabella, how dare you? Mother, Isabella interrupted softly, I love you and I honor our family's legacy, but I cannot live solely for its approval. I intend to pursue my passions, to stand for what I believe, even if it means leaving behind the world your rules have created. A breathless silence fell. Then Ashford laughed, a cold, cutting sound. And what of me, Miss Hartley? Will you pursue your passions at the expense of every alliance your family has arranged? Isabella's pulse slowed. She realized this was not merely a clash with Ashford, but the culmination of every expectation that had bound her. Lord Ashford, you represent a world where duty eclipses desire. I choose desire, the desire to be known, to be free, and to give my heart where it will flourish. She turned to Ethan, her eyes shining with resolve. And I choose him. For a heartbeat, the room held its breath. Then her mother sprang forward, voice trembling with anger and fear. You ungrateful child, you shame us all. Isabella squared her shoulders. Mother, I will always cherish our home, and I hope one day you'll see that my happiness need not be your shame. At that moment, Ethan stepped beside her, placing a steady hand at the small of her back. Isabella has more courage and kindness in her little finger than many have in their entire hearts, he declared. I stand with her. A sharp gasp came from Lady Foxworth. Chalmers leaned forward, eyes glittering. Yet the steel in Ethan's voice and the grace in Isabella's posture shifted the atmosphere. Then, unexpectedly, a soft voice rose from the gallery's edge, one of the students whose artwork Isabella had championed. Here, here, let us toast to bravery and kindness. One by one, other students and younger guests joined in. To courage! To choice! The hall's doors creaked open as allies spilled in artists, scholars, even a handful of sympathetic debutantes, drawn by Isabella's conviction. The murmured support swelled into applause. Faced with this unexpected alliance, Ashford's facade cracked. He bowed stiffly. Miss Hartley, you have made your choice. I see no further use for my presence. He turned on his heel and swept away, his entourage trailing. Isabella exhaled, heart pounding with relief and triumph. Her mother stared in stunned silence, her face a whirl of conflicting emotions. Then she softened, tears glistening in the lamplight. I only wanted the best for you, she whispered. Isabella crossed the room and took her mother's hand. Mother, the best for me, Isabella said gently, is to live a life of my own choosing. As the applause faded into the soft strains of a waltz, Ethan offered Isabella his arm. She placed her gloved hand in his, the ivory silk now a symbol of their shared courage. Together, they stepped onto the dance floor, not as debutante and scholar, but as equals united by conviction. As they moved beneath the crystalline chandelier, Isabella realized her deepest fear. Abandoning the life she knew had become her greatest triumph. In that moment, with every eye turned to them, she felt truly free, dancing not for approval, but for love. The morning after the frostlight ball dawned crisp and clear. The manor gardens glazed in frost that sparkled like diamonds under the pale winter sun. Isabella awoke in her chamber, with the lingering echo of applause still ringing in her ears, and the weight of yesterday's choices resting gently on her shoulders. Beside her bed lay the ivory glove, neatly folded atop a cushion of rose petals. Its journey had transformed from chance object to talisman of her courage. Below in the great hall, the household buzzed with hushed conversations. Servants exchanged furtive glances as they set tables for breakfast. The steward's usually calm demeanor was creased with concern. Word of Isabella's public stand had spread through staff and guests alike. Over her morning tea, Isabella listened to the footman's careful recital of gossip circulating in the kitchens and stables. Some whispered that she had shamed her family, others praised her bravery. Isabella rose, smoothing her gown and tightening her sash. She descended to find her mother waiting by the hearth, hands clasped around a cup of steaming broth. Lady Hartley's eyes, once cool with disapproval, softened at the sight of her daughter. "Isabella," she began hesitantly, "I've had time to think through last night's events." Isabella inclined her head. "Mother," Lady Hartley set down the cup, "I realize now that I was driven by fear for our reputation, for your future. But I did not see how deeply you ached to be seen for who you truly are." She reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from Isabella's forehead. "I fear the world is not always kind to those who defy its rules. Promise me you will be cautious." Isabella smiled, relief and love mingling in her chest. "I promise to be wise, not silent." Their embrace warmed both of them more than any hearthfire could, and for the first time Lady Hartley accepted that her daughter's happiness might lie beyond the gilded confines of tradition. Over the next fortnight, the social landscape of Rosewood shifted. Invitations that once bore gilded lettering now arrived on plain stationery, urging Isabella to counsel on new philanthropic efforts rather than debutante dances. The charity committees, once suspicious, welcomed her ideas for combining academic lectures with artistic exhibitions to raise funds for the city's orphanage. It was a departure from the usual ribbon cuttings and porcelain tea sets, but one that echoed her deepest passions. At the first lecture exhibition, held in the newly refurbished gallery where she and Ethan had first met, Isabella stood before an attentive audience of scholars, artists, and dignitaries. Winter light filtered through tall windows, illuminating paintings of children at play and sculptures of hopeful faces. With Ethan at her side, she spoke eloquently about art's power to heal trauma and bridge social divides. "My own journey," Isabella told the crowd, "began with a single act of kindness toward a lost glove, an object that reminded me that small gestures can ignite profound change." She held up the glove for all to see. "Let us each carry an emblem of compassion in our hearts and allow it to guide our actions." Applause rose like a chorus of acceptance. Isabella's mother watched from the front row, pride shining in her eyes. Even Lady Foxworth, seated stiffly beside her, offered a curt nod of respect. Afterward, as guests mingled over spiced wine and delicate pastries, Ethan guided Isabella to a quiet alcove. He slipped the glove from her hand and pressed it to his lips. "You've done more than I ever dreamed. That night at the cafe was only the beginning." Isabella leaned into him. "And you've been my steadfast ally through it all." They shared a gentle kiss, unobserved by others but felt as a declaration. Their bond was no fleeting romance, but a partnership built on shared conviction. Nevertheless, not all currents ran smooth. Rumors persisted in certain salons that Isabella was neglecting her aristocratic duties in favor of intellectual whims, and a few invite-only soirees conspicuously omitted her name. Lady Chalmers penned a scathing column in the Society Gazette, questioning whether Isabella's vague humanitarian projects were a vanity project rather than genuine charity. Instead of retreating, Isabella faced these criticisms head-on. She responded in a public letter. "True service to others requires both heart and mind. I will not apologize for seeking knowledge to inform my compassion. Let us judge projects by their impact, not by the pleasantry of their pageantry." The letter's measured tone and resolute spirit won her further admirers, young women who saw in Isabella a model for forging their own paths. With Ethan's encouragement, she organized a winter festival in the manor grounds. Snow lanterns lit winding pathways, and student musicians performed carols beneath ice-laden pines. The event raised substantial funds and, more importantly, brought together citizens from all walks of life, aristocrats, scholars, laborers, whose laughter and goodwill melted old social divisions. Even the most skeptical guests found warmth in the lantern-lit night. Lady Chalmers, observing from the pavilion, allowed herself a rare smile. When Isabella presented her with a token of appreciation, a handcrafted snow lantern, Chalmers beamed. "I misjudged you," she confessed. "Forgive my folly." Isabella's heart swelled with satisfaction, not for having bested her critics, but for demonstrating that unity and empathy could triumph over rigid hierarchies. As winter gave way to early spring, Isabella and Ethan's relationship deepened. They studied together in the university library, shared long walks through thawing gardens, and exchanged letters when apart. Isabella's world had expanded beyond the manor walls to include lecture halls and artist ateliers, while Ethan discovered the nuances of society life. Dances and dinners he once dismissed as frivolous became occasions for meaningful conversation under Isabella's guidance. One sunny March afternoon, they sat beneath the budding cherry blossoms in the manor's orchard. Isabella produced the ivory glove, now showing signs of wear around its delicate seams. "It's time," she said softly, offering it to Ethan. He took it with gentle respect. "Thank you for lending me your bravery." With careful fingers, he handed it back. "I return it now as your own, so you may carry it forward on your journey." Isabella accepted it, smiling through tears of gratitude. The glove, once a symbol of chance, had become an emblem of their shared growth. In the weeks that followed, Isabella received word that her mother had arranged a spring gala, an event meant to showcase her daughter's transformation for society's approval. But Isabella had other plans. When the gala invitations were delivered, she edited them personally, replacing the formal dress code with a scholarly attire request and adding a lecture segment on art therapy. Lady Hartley, noticing the changes, confronted her daughter. "Isabella, must you always upend tradition?" Isabella took her mother's hand. "Mother, tradition and progress need not be enemies. We honor our past by building a future that includes every heart." Her mother hesitated, then smiled. "Very well. Show them the strength of Hartley grace." On the evening of the gala, guests arrived in tweed jackets and modest gowns, eager to hear Isabella's address. She spoke with confidence and warmth, weaving personal anecdotes with informed insights. When she concluded, the room erupted in applause that sounded like rolling thunder, enthusiastic, heartfelt, and unmistakably sincere. Ethan stepped forward, pride evident in his gaze. He took Isabella's hand and, before the assembled company, led her in a simple waltz. No masks, no fanfare, just two people dancing in harmony with their convictions. As they glided across the parquet floor, Isabella realized how far she'd come. From a debutante shackled by expectation to a leader who inspired others to embrace both head and heart. And at the center of it all was the glove, its journey complete, yet its legacy just beginning. Together, Isabella and Ethan had not only found love, they had forged a new path for their world, one where compassion, courage, and choice wove a tapestry far more dazzling than any silk gown or crystal chandelier. With every step of their dance, they affirmed the truth Isabella had discovered long ago, that the smallest gestures can light the way to the grandest transformations. Spring's first dawn found Isabella standing at the manor's rose garden, petals unfolding like promises beneath her fingertips. The ivory glove, now gently worn and softened by time, lay in her palm as a quiet testament to her journey. She inhaled the fragrance of new blossoms, her heart brimming with the peace she'd once thought impossible. Ethan approached, carrying 2 cups of tea. He offered one to her, his eyes warm with shared memories. Isabella slipped the glove onto her hand, feeling its familiar strength. "I never imagined a simple glove could change my life," she murmured. Ethan smiled, sliding his hand into hers. "Nor did I yet here we stand, having shaped our world by the smallest act of kindness." They wandered among dewy roses, speaking little content in the harmony they'd created together. Isabella reflected on the mask she once wore at the masquerade, the doubts she overcame in the gallery, and the stand she took beneath crystal chandeliers. Each step had led her here, free, beloved, and true to herself. As the sun climbed higher, they stopped beneath a blossoming arch. Ethan gently removed the glove and draped it over a low rose trellis. "Let it rest here," he said softly, "a symbol for all who pass beneath, reminding them that courage blooms where compassion takes root." Hand in hand, they turned toward the manor, ready to meet whatever new chapters awaited, confident that together they could face any winter and savor every spring.